I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make scones, or maybe you call them scones, filled with jam, and this is what they look like. This scone has this really nice layer of jam in the center, and when these are freshly baked, the outsides are wonderfully crisp, yet inside they're soft and flaky. So the first thing we need to do is to preheat our oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 200 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a baking sheet. Now I've lined mine with parchment paper, but you could lightly butter it or spray it with one of those non-stick sprays. So I'm just going to make the scone batter just by hand. So in a large bowl, I have put 2 cups, which is 260 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And to that, I'm adding 1/4 cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar. If you prefer, you could kind of use a little less sugar, a little more. I find 1/4 cup is about perfect for me. So, and then you will need 2 teaspoons, 8 grams of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. I'm just going to whisk that. You could sift it. Just want to make sure everything's mixed together. And then you will need 1/2 cup, 113 grams of cold, make sure it's nice and cold, butter. I'm using unsalted here. I prefer the flavor. You could use salted. And what I've done is cut it into small chunks. So then I'm just going to put that in there. And then if you have one of these pastry blenders, nice tool, what I'm going to do is cut the butter into the flour mixture just with a downward movement like this, just until the butter is in coarse crumbs. Now, if you don't have one of these, you could just, use 2 knives and just kind of cut like this, or you could just use your fingertips to kind of mash it down until it's coarse crumbs. That looks good. So scrape off that. So this is what you're looking for, coarse crumbs. Now, if there's a few little bigger pieces, little chunks of butter, don't worry about that. So now for our liquid ingredients, I have in a measuring cup 1/2 cup, 120 milliliters, 120 grams. Now I'm using a cream. I'm using a 1/2 and 1/2. You could use some type of light cream. You could even use a heavy whipping cream. Really, it depends how rich tasting do you want your scones to be. So I'm using like kind of a compromise 1/2 and 1/2, which is really 1/2 cream, 1/2 milk. So whatever you like. And then I have 1 large egg. I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to whisk that to break up the egg. And I'm also going to add, for flavoring, 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. Now, if you don't want the vanilla flavor, you can just leave that out. Or you could even put like, a little bit of pure almond extract if you would prefer an almond flavor. So let's get that. And everything, my egg, my cream is cold. So now I'm just going to make a well in the center of my dry ingredients and just pour in the center there. Mixture. And then you could use just a fork, a spatula. I'm just using one of these plastic bench scrapers to kind of mix. The reason I like to do this by hand is, it's very important not to over mix your scone dough, because if you do, then they will be a little tough, which of course nobody wants. So this way I can kind of really feel, I'm noticing what I'm doing here, how wet. And while I did add all of my wet ingredients at once, because I kind of did a test batch, so I know I need all that liquid. What you might want to do, because it's hard to know how much liquid your flour will absorb, You might want to hold a little bit of the liquid back and then see how much your flour absorbs, and then you could always add the rest because you don't want it too moist. So I'm working this with my hands. A little messy, but that's okay. So you just want to bring it together. As you can see, I'm moving it around to get all that flour. I mean, you could do this in your mixer, but really, it's not very difficult to do by hand. So now, that aside, put a little flour down, empty that out, make sure I get everything, and then I can get some of that off my hands. I'm going to take a little flour, kind of helps get rid of that, and then I'm just going to knead it just a couple times to bring it together. So this is what you're looking for. It's, you know, it's a little sticky, but it's not like ridiculous. So now, our scones have a layer of jam in between. You may wonder, how are we going to do that? Well, what we're going to do is going to divide our dough here in half. Now, if you have a scale, this is the time, pull it out. And when I did it before, I needed about 290 grams per round. So now you will need some flour. Don't overdo it, but you will need some. And then now you can pat. I'm going to actually roll this with my rolling pin into an 8-inch, 20-centimeter round. So I have my rolling pin. Put a little flour on that. Give myself some room here. And then when you're rolling, just move it around. It's kind of like pie dough. Just move it around. So just roll each one into an 8-inch, 20-centimeter round. So you may want to have a ruler. As you're rolling, just, you know, if it gets out of shape, just put it back into shape and then keep rolling. So, and whenever you're rolling out your dough, like kind of rub your hand over the top to make sure it's of even thickness. And there's, I don't know whether you can see this, but there's all kinds of nice flecks of the butter, and that's going to melt, and we're going to get a nice flaky scone. So I'm just going to double check. Yeah. It's 8 inches, 20 centimeters. So now you will need 1/4 cup, which is 60 milliliters, or about 70 grams of your favorite jam or preserve. My favorite is raspberry, and I'm actually using a homemade raspberry jam. So you could make that. You could go to the joybaking.com website, and I do have a recipe as well as a video on homemade raspberry jam, which is really good because it's really tart and tangy, but a little sweet. Wonderful. You'll never go back to the store-bought once you make your own. So now what we need is a little bit of egg wash. So I have a large egg here. I'm just going to whisk that with a little bit of cream. If you don't want to use an egg wash, you could just use some cream or milk, because we're going to use this to glue the two pieces of scone together, plus we're going to brush the top of our scones with it to help with browning. So, double duty here. So now I've got a pastry brush, and I'm just going to brush on one, just like about an inch around. That's about 2.5 centimeters around the outside, like so. Just a light coating, and then have our jam. Yummy. And then you can just use the back of a spoon, or I've got an offset spatula just to spread that. Now, like I said, you don't have to use raspberry. You could use whatever, you know, apricot or blackberry, you know, anything, strawberry. Try to get an even layer there. Okay. And then, so then we're going to take this top piece and put it over the top. Hopefully they're the same size. They are, if we measured right. So then just kind of, and then what I like to do is just take a fork and go around. You need just rub it in a little bit of flour to seal those edges. Although personally, I don't mind if it oozes out a bit when they're baked. I think it kind of adds some character to our scone. But there we go. And then you take a knife, or I'm just taking a bench scraper, and we're going to cut this hopefully in half. I'm just eyeballing it here. I'm just going to wipe this off, get the jam off. And each half, and cut in half, and then cutting that in half. So we're going to have 8 triangles. And then you can just, I mean, you could use a knife. Just use my scraper here, and we're going to put that, space them apart on our baking sheet, like so. Go. And then we're just going to lightly brush the top of our scones with our egg wash. Like I said, that's going to help with browning, give it a nice shine. And it's the last one. Now, if you want, you could sprinkle the tops with, you know, granulated white sugar or even some kind of sparkling sugar. That would give it a little bit of a sparkle, but I'm just going to leave them like that. So now, everyone's oven is a little different, but I find around 18-20 minutes. So what you're looking for, they will rise, you'll turn, the outside would turn a beautiful golden brown, nice and crisp when you, or you know, firm when you touch it. I mean, you could take a toothpick and insert it into the center, but I tend to go more on the look and the feel. Nice, firm. So about 18-20 minutes. Okay, so our scones are done. So put your baking sheet on a wire rack. Now, aren't they gorgeous? Beautiful golden brown. They've risen, and if you touch them, they're firm to the touch. So what I'm going to do is just let them cool down, and then when we come back, we will try one. So let's try one. They're still a little warm, just how I like them. And if I break it open, as you can see, the outside is wonderfully crisp, inside nice and soft, flaky, and then you have the jam. I love the crispness of the outside crust. Wonderfully soft, flaky, just a little sweet. And then, of course, the contrast. I love raspberry jam. The contrast of the jam to the softness of the scone is really nice. You could put a little dollop of whipped cream or Devon cream would be very good with these. And of course, scones are best the day they're made. But you can, you know, cover and store them for a few days, maybe warm them up a little in the microwave, or you can even freeze them. So try these. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyOfBaking.com.